Everybody, welcome to another episode of Get Into It with Gila. I'm Gila Glassberg, your host, registered dietitian and intuitive eating counselor. And today I have on the one and only Evelyn Tribole. Hi, Evelyn.
Hi,
How are you?
I am so good. I'm thrilled
Okay,
to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on, as you could see. So for the one person listening who doesn't know who you are, can you just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? Where do you live and what do you do?
Okay, I live in Southern California and I'm the co-founder of Intuitive Eating. And, Elise Resch and I wrote this book, it's going to be 30 years, so 1995. And it's amazing how that has become my career and my passion, both in training people and also working with individuals who are struggling with their bodies and their eating. And it is just so gratifying. And when we started the work, we can say it was, research inspired, but now there's close to 350 studies on our work showing benefit. It blows me away. It makes me so happy.
Well, it makes me so happy because I don't know about you. I really would love to hear what you have to say about this. I did actually interview you. I want to say 5 years ago when I was starting out my intuitive eating journey as a person and as a dietitian. And I have to tell you that when I first started, I felt like there was like a shift going on in the world.
Mm.
People were, like they wanted to hear something different than diet culture. And I don't know, I really want to hear what you have to say, but I feel like because Ozempic GLP-1 movement sort of like took over the last 1 to 2 years, and I've had this conversation on the podcast before, I see again a little bit of a shift where it's like I was working on my body image, I was working on making peace with food, I was working on making peace with myself, and now that I could just take a shot or now take a pill, I don't know if I have to work on that. And I really want to know, you see a broader perspective than I do, I think, just because you reach more people. What do you see in your line of work? Do you think
Yeah,
that?
I agree with you. It's in fact there was an article in either in the New Yorker or one of their subsidiary publications, and it was something to the effect of emaciation's in again. And the author was quite upset about it because she had worked so hard on making peace with food, and now here we are back
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
And I think we have to acknowledge that this is something that is going on and it is really harmful. In fact, my personal physician calls it artificial anorexia. And for those of us that work in the eating disorder field, we're really concerned that this is going to be even creating more eating disorders, which are really on the rise. And when you think about adolescents, 1 in 3 have disordered eating. There's a newer study on adults, it's about the same amount also have disordered eating, which quickly leads into eating disorders. And, I want to be really clear. No shame to anyone who's on these medications, especially when they're for blood sugar regulation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good research and it's at a much lower dose. I'm concerned at the euphoria on these medications that are being pushed by a lot of physicians and including the researchers, in which we're not really giving a fair due process, if you will, on the side effects. So, for example, there was a recent study just published showing that people that started GLP-1s within the first year, 20% developed some kind of nutrient deficiency. So this is 500,000 patient records where they saw this. And those are only the ones that are documented, and those are only the ones that we see in the short term. When you look at issues like bone health, which takes longer to have the impact of that, I'm really concerned to see what's going to happen.
Hmm.
And one of the issues also I'm really worried about is what's happening with lean mass. Now, this is very much acknowledged in the research that you lose a lot of lean mass when you lose weight on these GLP-1s. And what's not talked about that there's a lot of things that are, glumped into that category of lean mass. Of course, it's muscle, but it
Hmm.
also includes organ tissue. And what a newest study just came out last week shows that when you stop the medication, not only does the weight come back, it comes back faster than traditional
Hmm.
dieting. And the reason that's of a big concern is all the research now coming out on weight cycling,
Right.
showing the very harmful impacts of this, the very things that weight loss is supposed to take care of, weight cycling really amplifies. So it is really linked with blood sugar dysregulation and increased diabetes, increased cardiovascular disease, inflammation. There's all kinds of problems that are not innocuous with this. And those are some of the concerns I have. And then, when someone stops the pill, which I think the last statistic I read, somewhere between 50 to 70% will stop not the pill, but the medication, which is usually an injection, within a year of taking it, whether it's because of side effects, whether it's because they can't afford it,
Mhm.
or whatever the issue happens to be. And so I think one of the things we have to really be cognizant of with our clients who are considering this is that we are open enough to have these conversations so that there's complete informed consent, not just, yeah, I know that harm can happen, but to really understand what the ramifications are. And when you stop this kind of medication, and now, your body has not had enough to eat.
Right.
What we're seeing reported is that what the amount of food that people are eating would qualify in many cases what we see in eating disorders and disordered eating. And what's
Mhm.
going to happen then when that medication you're off of that? Well, hunger is going to be really big, not because there's anything wrong with you. It's a natural compensatory response. So I think it's going to be a big mess, honestly. And right now, just looking at all the excitement, and I'll tell
Mhm.
you a personal pet peeve. And
Please.
I'll be careful how I say this because I really don't want to shame any particular person or celebrity. But when they start talking about, oh, my health journey, because they've
Mhm.
lost all this weight,
Yeah.
I would rather than just call it what it is. Hey, I lost a lot of weight. I'm excited about it. But to go and say this is my health journey. And by the way, I get it because
Mhm.
health has been conflated with body size, health has been conflated with, weight loss. And yet when we start looking at all the health problems associated with this, that's not health.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, I think we're going to have our work cut out for us. That's my thing.
Do you see the Ozempic phenomenon similar to the fen-phen phenomenon that
I
happened
think
in
it's bigger.
the 90s?
It's
Yeah.
bigger. Yeah. And because I've been around long enough, I was really in the midst of all the fan stuff. And yes, there was excitement. The thing that's different now is the amplification of all of this on
Mhm.
social media.
Right.
And one of the things is I do take time to really read what's happening in just mainstream
Hmm.
media is that many times when there are stories on GLP-1s, there's not really a counterbalance in terms of, well, here are some things that can happen. So, for
Right.
example, when that study got published last week and made all this headline news, people that were being interviewed, experts, were saying, yeah, they're going to gain weight. So you just have to really watch your lifestyle. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we're gaslighting the patients. It's like
Right.
so-called exercise, cut out what you're eating to lose
Right.
weight. We have 100 years of research showing it doesn't work. It
Hmm.
creates changes in metabolism, it creates changes in hormones that are problematic and predictive of more weight gain, not because of anything that you did that was wrong.
Yeah.
Those are issues I have big concerns with.
Yeah. I feel the same way. It's hard. It's like, I've spoken about this so many times on the podcast, so I'm just gonna like bring out my biggest, I guess, like, I don't want to say arguments, but like, devil's
Yeah,
advocate
concerns. Yeah.
concerns. But like, I know that when people are on a diet, they have rose-colored glasses, right? And I
Yeah.
think I heard Brie Campo say that on her podcast, and I've quoted her many times. And I think back to my dieting years of life is so great because I lost weight. And I see that for those people who felt very like hopeless, they really do feel so good, and they feel like they have a new handle on their lives because of Ozempic, which, like, I don't want to shame anybody. And I totally understand the desire to lose weight. And like, we live in a society that literally is obsessed with weight loss. Like, it's
Yeah.
everywhere. And so not to, shame anybody or blame anyone, but at the same time, just to know the other side of things. And I'm constantly going back to the fen-phen. I don't know if all the listeners know what we're talking about. And just from I was born in 1990. So just from the research, and I remember actually learning about this specific drug in biochemistry when I was a nutrition student, how it was the miracle drug, and it was what they ended up finding out was that it was really dangerous. And I think a lot of birth defects, right? A lot of
And
people.
heart problems were a big one. Yeah. So here's what's really interesting. You're mentioning, the excitement, and let's call it euphoria with the weight loss. There's an old paper published in the 50s by Stunkard, who is a renowned researcher. I think he's dead now. God, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. Published in the 50s, and now we are in the 1925, but who knows? Um, but he talked about the euphoria that people have with weight loss. And I go, oh my God, he's documented way back then the
Yeah.
euphoria. But then what follows are these depressive events that happen afterwards because it's not sustainable. And so that's the big question is,
Hmm.
and one of my other concerns with these GLP-1s is they say, well, you got to be on them for the rest of your life.
Right.
And we don't have any research on what it's like to be on it for the rest of your life in terms of what the outcomes are, in terms of what more side effects can be, including the malnutrition issues that I had mentioned. In fact, there was another study just recently published looking at people who now qualified to get joint replacement surgery because they've lost weight. And what they found is a significant amount of those patients had severe malnutrition because they were using GLP-1s in order to get to that
Right.
into that place. So I,
Right.
I think we're going to have a
We're
perfect
gonna
storm
see.
on our hands. Yeah,
I have,
yeah.
I have I'm gonna challenge you because I know like I'm challenged by my own clients. So this is what I think about myself. So let's say, for example, my daughter is 8 months old, and at a recent checkup, the doctor,
Ah,
yeah, the doctor said to me, I don't remember exactly when it was, maybe 3 months, 4 months. He said, "Do you want to give her the RSV vaccine?" So she's my fifth baby.
mhm.
Thank God. So I said to him, I don't remember giving my other babies the RSV vaccine. Not that I remember these things so well, but it happens to be one of my kids was hospitalized with RSV for many days. I figured I would
Oh,
remember that one. Yeah. So I said,
yeah.
he said, it's actually a new vaccine. It's a new drug, a new vaccine. So I said, well, I'm a little nervous, like to give her a new vaccine that's newly on the market. So he said number one, it's been on the market for many years. It's a very expensive drug. It's a very expensive vaccine, and we only gave it to asthmatic babies.
Ah,
And number two, now it's available for all babies because the technology around vaccines has changed so much that it became an affordable vaccine. That's one. Another similar things have happened to me in the last few years with like medications. I've asked the doctor, what's the validity? Now, because I'm a dietitian, I know what to ask.
yeah.
Not everybody knows. Okay, it's only been on the market for 2 years, but we have, research is different. Same with the COVID vaccine. People were, very desperate to get the COVID vaccine, even though it was only on the market for a short while. But research is different than it was in the 1990s. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So do you feel like I know it's only been on we cannot nobody could possibly know the effects of Ozempic yet.
No.
But at the same time, people are taking newer drugs because the technology is better now. Do you know what I mean?
Right, right. But the difference what you're describing is what is the lifetime effect from doing it every day versus a vaccine. You do
Yeah,
that once or twice, depending on the schedule.
right,
And okay, now that the whole issue is about preventing risk of getting that particular, illness, which I think is different than taking a drug daily, 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 daily for the
right.
rest of your life. And you're right,
That's
there's
what I'm
some things
thinking.
that we're not going to know. And how
Right.
long do we have to wait?
Yeah.
Um, and we have to look at the issue of risk benefit. And this is where it is so problematic because when we start getting into the issue of weight and weight loss, it is such a big money machine and it's been so politicized. Back in 2013, the American Medical Association asked its scientific task force to take a look at this whole issue of weight and asked, can we call, quote, obesity a disease? And they concluded looking at all the research, no, we cannot. There's not enough research to justify this, and we're concerned that if we did, it's going to medicalize and unnecessary have people get treatments that they don't need and
Mhm.
creating more harm. And the powers that be did not like the conclusions, and so they took it to a popular vote. They got outvoted. So that was 2013. We're only 13 years later. And so then when you start following the money and looking at
Mhm.
the task force that were created that sound like they're like consumer independent task force when they were actually funded by big pharma to get policy change to get reimbursement. There's a lot of players here. And so when we look at risk benefit, they'll say, oh, but you lose weight and that's such a big
Mhm.
benefit on your health. It's like, well, wait, 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 wait. Let's
Right.
stop right there. Let's look at all the research that shows otherwise, that there's harm that happens. Or when you say that there's benefit, let's look at all the confounders that are missing that could explain benefit. For example, people in larger bodies are treated horribly. There's a lot of
Mhm.
weight stigma. There's medical fat phobia. There are
Mhm.
people who are afraid to go see their doctors because they don't want to get weighed and they don't want to get the lecture, which has an impact on outcome. So it's not as straightforward as they would leave you to believe. And so when you look at the traditional weight loss diets, basically exercise more, eat less,
Mm-hmm.
when you follow the research, by year 2 and especially by year 5, we see the weight coming back, not through any fault of anybody. And that is well known and it's not talked about. And again, the harm of this and the impact of this is not talked about. So I think that's what's different. There's this whole cultural neuroses around weight.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some, I don't know if we talked about this before, but it's worth mentioning, even if it's a review, that doctors and scientists are human beings that are subject to the social pressures of the day. So, for example, back in the 17th century, when doctors were doing surgeries, they found that a lot of women were dying. And one doctor thought, well, what if we were to wash our hands? Would that change the outcome? And the answer was yes, it was a market outcome. He presented the data and he got laughed out of medicine. And like, no, we're doctors, we're gentlemen, we don't need to wash our hands. And we're proud of wearing our bloody garments because it shows that we are surgeons. And meanwhile, decades later, germ theory comes along and shows that, yeah, germs can cause illness, including death, and we need to wash our hands. But back then it was laughable. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think we're seeing the same thing when it comes to weight, that, physicians and scientists are subject to this same type of so it's called the Semmelweis reflex, named after this doctor who discovered hand washing could save lives. And the Semmelweis reflex is when new data come along that refutes the popular paradigm, that it's met with incredulity. It's like, no, that
Mm-hmm.
can't be. That can't be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what we're really seeing, a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Not, a long time ago when Galileo agreed that the Earth is not the center of a universe, he was put under house arrest for heresy.
Wow.
So we have historical patterns here,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because whenever it's like I just like I believe in this so much. It's like so much a part of my life, but like I want to say like 90% of the people in my life do not believe in it. And like I'm
Hmm.
wondering, you probably have similar. And it's like, does it ever get like frustrating for you? Like you just want to shake people? Obviously, you don't.
I love that question. And people have asked me different versions of it, like, I've stayed in this for so long and haven't
Yeah.
lost hope. So here's what's changed in me, and here's why I don't want to like shake somebody, and I totally get it when someone does. First of all, I used to have this belief, and I'm almost embarrassed to say I had this belief that if I was doing a really good job in one conversation, I would change someone's mind, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a patient, whether it's a family member. And then I realized, oh my God, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
When we have a powerful belief and value system that's been passed down into families from great grandma to grandma and everyone else, we don't change that with one conversation.
Right.
And so what I've come to realize is that it's going to take somebody many exposures to this information because they don't believe it either until
Right.
there's enough suffering. And let's say it's going to take someone to be exposed to this information in different forms, let's say 20 times.
Right.
So if you are the seed planter, meaning you're the first person that gives them the information, that's the toughest place to be because they don't want it. It's like, oh, you got to be kidding me, get out of
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But if you're the seed waterer, that you're the 10th person, they're getting a little curious and they're starting to notice their own suffering and maybe there's something to it. So that's what keeps my sanity, that okay, I'm just watering the seed for this individual. And at some point, when they are in a place of deep enough suffering, they'll remember this. And I always tell my patients when they're not ready that I'm always here and ready to do the work if and when change your
Yeah.
mind. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing I tend to do in these conversations is I speak from experience and experience of working with so many patients over the years that I start, and this is what's changed in me. I will now say, rather than getting into all the research, which I love to do, that's one of my strong points. It's like, give me some research and I'll just tell you all the data. I start with the humanistic aspect of suffering. And I have seen so much suffering at the hands of diet culture and in the lives of my patients that are so profound. And when I talk to somebody about suffering, I don't ever get someone who pushes back because I have not met anyone yet, and maybe the rare person exists, but you don't want to see people suffer. So they're not so defended against the information. Oh, you've seen people suffer. Well, how is that? And I'll explain some reasons why, and they get curious and maybe they can identify with some of this suffering in their lives. And one of the areas I've seen this really have an impact, and I think you would probably relate to this having 5 kids, especially. Congratulations, by the way, on the newest. Is if you think about your own suffering at the hands of diet culture, when you think about changing diet culture, it's so daunting. But if we can start framing it that, we can end the legacy of diet culture at our kitchen table, in
Mhm.
our family, that
Mhm.
is that's doable. So that minimally, maybe in my home environment, it is a, dare I say, safe space where we don't disparage bodies, we don't disparage food. And if you have family members that don't agree with that, you can say, you don't have to agree with how I'm raising my kids. I just want you to respect that this is what we do in our family, in our
Right,
household.
right, right,
Um, yeah, and then if you're comfortable, you can, share, some of the suffering that you've experienced, but you might not be comfortable depending on who
right.
it is that you're talking to, because it takes a lot of energy to have
Yes, yes.
conversations. Yeah.
It's really, I'm getting like choked up because
Oh,
I love listening to what you have to say about this. It's so important to me. It's so like, it's like there's so many people in my life that just don't believe in it. And yes, I definitely have to work on. I love Christy Harrison's book,
oh
Anti-Diet.
yeah.
And I always tell people that one of the reasons why her book is amazing is because she does like humanize the experience of living with diet culture, switching to the
Mhm.
mindset of intuitive eating, but also understanding that it does cost you a lot of emotional energy to talk about intuitive eating to people who don't want to hear about it, and that's
Yeah.
okay. We could, I think that's something also that it's like a process, a journey of learning. Like,
That's actually a really good point. And that's something that has changed with me also. And in part because I have a social justice leadership coach who's helped change my life and perspective. And in the recent past, I felt this obligation and duty to talk to every single person, including trolls. And that's exhausting. And she's
mhm,
like, she has this mantra: are they reachable, teachable, and ready? And if the answer is yes, she'll talk to them about different issues. And in my case, I've added one other thing: are they reachable, teachable, ready? And do I have the bandwidth to do this? Do I have the energy to do this? And I knew I finally crossed over in being able to do this. It's one thing to want to do it, but to, be able to, was when Jillian Michaels, the famous trainer that was on The Biggest Loser and is very fat phobic, decided one day, I think it was during COVID, to go onto the intuitive eating website and start giving her opinions about the principles. I think in all my life and all my social media, that was the one I got tagged in the most. Like, you gotta do something. And I thought, she has no interest in changing, or I have no problem talking to someone who's just curious and really wants to know, even if I don't agree, but if they want to know, I will have a
right,
conversation. But it was
right,
so clear that wasn't her case. I said, no, I don't want to give her, I don't want to give her my energy. I'd rather give my energy to somebody who would rather, who's ready to hear this information, or for me to make, I do make, there's this one post, my most popular post is how to spot fake intuitive eating. And so anytime something new comes around, like if someone is selling intuitive eating for weight loss, run away. If they're saying
mhm,
you do keto and intuitive eating, run
mhm,
away.
yeah,
So those are some things that we have to protect our energy,
yeah,
because if we try and fight every single battle online or wherever it happens to be, you're going to drain yourself and burn out. And you are a precious resource in this anti-diet culture. And
yeah,
people get surprised when I say, it's like, what? I go, yeah,
yeah,
because I want you in it for the long haul. I don't
right,
want you burning out. You
yeah,
know, save it
yeah,
for your family member who is open, who, they might be really pushing you back, but you can see that they're kind of open if you're willing to have enough conversations. I'd rather you save the energy for that than
yeah.
for someone who's not even, we don't even know if that could just be an AI bot or something,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
it's true. And I want to say we had this conversation like 5, 6 years ago, and you told me the same thing. You said, Gila, you're planting seeds, and it stuck with me. And I give it over to my clients when they're also feeling frustrated
Uh,
that maybe somebody asked them and they were really seemed genuinely curious, and then they just found themselves getting frustrated and frustrated. And I said, number one, you don't have to engage in that conversation, and that's okay. And number two, you really are planting seeds, and that happens where somebody asks you about it, and then they blow you off, and then 5 years later, they're like, "Hmm, you had something good there," you know?
Well, you know, and that's actually a really good point because I've had that happen with a lot of patients, where eventually someone will say, "No, really, I want to know because you seem happier. I don't know what it is, but there's something about you that you just seem just more at ease in life." And they can't name it because they can't even imagine that they let go of dieting and so on. But
Yeah,
that's sometimes just modeling your own well-lived life can get people really curious. You know, when you look at all the ways diet culture drains you, like putting in all this energy, and we only have so much stamina, and we only have so
yeah,
much room in our brain to deal with all these things. And then if you're using it all up for dieting, oh my God, what do you have left for your kids? And
yeah,
sometimes what I will say to parents, I'm really careful when I say this because I think parenting is the most humbling thing you can ever do in your life. And I've been humbled more times than I can care to say. Um, oh my God. And with all of that, I forgot my point. Oh, isn't that funny?
yeah. Don't worry about it.
I
Um,
totally forgot my point.
don't
Oh,
worry. This happens to me all the time when I'm in the middle of a podcast and I'm like, I had a really good idea, but it will come back to you. It will totally
yeah,
come.
I know. I'm going to share a story. It's not the point I was going to make, but it's one that just warms my heart. It just recently happened over the Christmas holidays. My daughter sent me a text message very late at night, the night before Christmas, and it was a picture of the letter to Santa that my grandkids wrote, and it said, "Dear Santa," and it was by the cookies they put out. "Dear Santa, you can have as much cookies as you want, but you don't have to eat all of them if you don't want to either." Yeah, I just thought that was so cute. So looking at the trickle
Yeah.
down effect
Yeah.
in that kind of way, that's what warms
Yeah.
my heart, you know?
Yeah. I think that it's actually like a really powerful, profound thing to say that in general in life that anything that you look at like globally, nationally, like universally is very daunting that you would want to change, right? But if it's like
Yeah.
I'm a mother, I'm a parent, I'm a spouse, I could, work on my relationship, I could work on the dynamic in my home. That is what we're meant to do, and that is what we're able to do. So, and yeah, it does have a trickle down effect. I know, like a smaller example than intuitive eating, but let's say like, I've had moms tell me like, if let's say I have a play date over and I say to them like, oh, could I offer them an apple? Like my kids usually have a fruit when they come home from school or something, and they say, oh no, they don't eat fruit. And I've seen the kids eating fruit because
Ah,
my kids are eating fruit and exposure to all different types of food. And
yeah.
like the mom will be shocked. Oh, they'll never eat apple in my house. And it's like, oh, there's just like a very non-scary, safe space. And my kids are eating apples, so they're eating an apple. And yes, yes, no, no, not always, of course. And like there's no pressure, but like I've seen that with kids before, and it's like, wow, like the like and I do coach a lot of parents and when it comes to like their daughters or their kids just talking about I don't want to be fat. I don't want to gain weight. And like I hear my own children talking about, fat, skinny, and sometimes like it
Mm,
hits me in a way where I'm like, and then I'm like, no. What I tell my clients, like the same way that you knew exactly what your mother's like biggest belief system was, whether she said it or not.
right, right, right,
Like
right.
it's there, it's in there. So like, okay, they'll say things that I don't necessarily agree with, or like, but they're kids and they're learning, and like I have to just stay true to my belief system, and then it gets in there.
Yeah. And I just remembered from you describing this, the point that I had lost, it came back.
Okay, good.
Came back. And it's related to parenting. And that is when I have worked with parents who are really dieting, let's even say they're on GLP-1s,
Yeah.
I will ask them, I'll say, I'm going to ask you a really tough question, and it's not to be mean, but do you find that you have more irritability? Because in my opinion, you're not eating enough. And do you find as a result of that, you tend to yell at your kids, and that's not your parenting
Yeah.
style? And I've had
Yeah.
I've had some parents, break out and start crying. Oh my God. Oh, it's like, well, when you're not getting enough to eat, we get irritable, we get edgy, and we don't have enough energy to deal. Energy
Mhm.
includes emotional energy. And so that's why I'm always looking at connecting some of this to someone's value system, because then that gives them meaning on, oh, maybe I need to look at this another way.
Right.
That yeah, this is it's impacting me, and now it's impacting my kids because it's impacting me in such a way that it's affecting my mood and so on. So
Right. So this is interesting. You're saying that some people might have the symptom of hunger, irritability when they're on the GLP-1s, even though they don't have their regular symptom of hunger, which might be, experiencing it as like their stomach growling.
Yeah, yeah. So let me back it up and just speak really general. That when you're not getting enough to eat, you can be more irritable and more hangry and so on. And I
Mhm.
have seen some cases with people on GLP-1s. So that's something I like to look at in terms of, is this something that doesn't match your parenting style? You
Right,
know?
right. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Because when I teach the hunger fullness scale to my clients and I tell them, did anybody explain to you, did anybody like try to teach you what does it feel like? What does physical hunger feel like in your body?
Mm,
And I say, I know that when I feel hungry, I feel hangry. Like I get hungry and angry and like really irritable. And some people are like, yeah, I never thought about that. Like I never realized that that was my hunger symptom. I just thought like, whatever, I'm in a bad mood. And right, because you associated hunger with your stomach growling, but there's so many other
yeah.
ways that you could feel hunger. So that's interesting. 'Cause
Right?
Well, the GLP-1s really affect people's like stomach hunger. That's what I
I'd
find.
like to see a study on that in mood. It'd be really interesting to see. But in general, one of the ways I look at it is I'll say, some people just think you have to have a growling stomach and that's what hunger is. It's like, no, you can just be
Right.
edgy and
Yeah.
irritable for no
Yeah.
reason. Yeah.
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 I have a specific story that I wanted to share with you, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change some details, but somebody specifically that I got to know, she was on a very strict diet for many years,
Mm,
and she felt like she was very good, quote unquote. I'm saying
mm,
in quotes, until something happened in her life, and she ended up going off the diet and couldn't get herself, quote unquote, back on the diet. But she was on the diet for like 6, 7, 8 years, many
oh,
years,
wow.
very strict. And also this person had been dieting for many years. I want to say like 15 years. And she found intuitive eating. It really spoke to her.
Mm,
She found that she gained a lot of weight while she was doing intuitive eating. And none of her like diabetes range, cholesterol, high blood pressure, none of those numbers were hot elevated
hmm.
until she was doing intuitive eating and gained the weight. Then she decided that she had to go on the GLP-1s. She did not want to go on the GLP-1s because she felt it was against her value system.
Mm,
Then she figured, I'm really sick. Like she felt like she was very sick based on these numbers, and I'm gonna have to go on the meds. And
mm.
it's not because I want to be a size two. It's not because I'm not gonna tell anyone. I'm not gonna go on and on about GLP-1s. I just feel like this is important for my health. And now her numbers are stabilized. And she's asking me, how do you make sense of that? I feel confident in my answer that dieting makes you like from all those years of dieting, it slows your metabolism and it really does mess with your numbers. And then yes, when you start to eat, you will probably gain weight. And I'm not really sure medically. I would love to hear what you would say to that. Like, why would then your numbers just rise like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's two issues here. Is one, why did they rise? But then also they came back down, you know?
From the
Sometimes,
GLP-1.
yeah,
That's
with the GLP-1. So
right,
if one of those numbers was blood sugar, well, that would make sense because GLP-1s,
right.
help manage those. So that would be predictable. So sometimes I'd like to look at a couple of things. Is like, okay, how long has someone been dieting? And let's say they've been dieting for 20 years. Oh,
Mhm.
they're older now. And
Right.
as we age, the biomarkers tend to get a little more offline, not because of anything that you did differently, but because of the aging
Mhm.
impact. Um, so yeah, it's interesting that her numbers are better. I would still be concerned in terms of, well, what kind of weight did she lose? Probably she lost some
Right.
lean mass.
Right.
Um, and I'm never going to judge people, but I
Hmm.
still have the worry, in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
what's going to happen when she gets off it. Does she plan to be on this the rest of her life? Can
Right.
she afford it, cost
Right.
wise to be on this
Yeah.
for the rest of her life?
Yeah. I did just hear that the GLP-1s are now in pill form.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I haven't worked with anyone on the pill form, but the other thing I see is anytime someone's been dieting and then they stop dieting, no matter what they do, they could do nothing, they could do intuitive eating, they're going to predictably have a weight gain trajectory because of the weight cycling that I had talked about
Yeah.
earlier. That's really predictable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I wonder what you have to say about this. I see. Okay. So first of all, I'm writing a book. I
oh,
am
good,
actively working.
congratulations.
And just so you know, I wrote about the washing your hands and I wrote
Uh-huh.
about how we used to think the earth was flat. So that's where I thought
Nice.
you were going with it. You're in there. I'll tell you about it. But what was I just going to say? That argument. It's what happens to me every single podcast. I've totally forgot what I was just going to say. But hold on, let me just think about it for a second. Weight loss, GLP-1s.
We were talking about predictable weight regain, no matter what you
And
do.
yeah. 1 second. So let me think about that. Predictable weight gain, no matter what you do. Oh, yes. This is what I talk about a lot, and I want to know your opinion. A lot of people are against genetically modified organisms, GMOs, right?
Hmm.
And I hear that. I hear that. What I what I will say back to that is the whole way that we don't have food insecurity anymore is because of GMOs. Yes? That meaning we have genetically modified organisms, like we have tons of wheat, we have tons of corn, and that produces a lot of our processed foods in America.
Hmm.
However, 100 to 200 years ago, we had a lot of food insecurity and food scarcity.
We still have it now. 40% of college students in the United States are experiencing food insecurity. So I would say, even with GMOs, if we go along that line of thinking, we still have it. We still have malnutrition and starving people in other countries,
Mhm.
often because of political barriers getting food, into the countries,
Yes, but do you believe that because of the GMOs, we have more? I mean, okay, that's a problem that we can't get the food into the countries, but I believe that we are producing more food,
That sounds right.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at
And
least,
I'll tell you my hesitation when you're
yeah,
asking a question like that. I'm thinking, okay, what's the source? What source do I have to agree with you or disagree with you?
right,
So
right.
it
It could be coming
sounds.
up. It could be, I could talk about it on the podcast that you found research to refute it, which I'm totally fine with.
No, I don't know. It sounds like it could be. I just keep thinking about what has changed in food production is agribusiness, and you know there's just been so much more that's changed in 100 years that isn't necessarily because we have more food of abundance, but more because what is that I'm trying to say? It has just shifted.
Hmm. For
Yeah.
sure, for sure. But like when people tell me like there is more obesity now, like if you look around, there is more obesity, and I'll say yes, 100%. There is more obesity. We have more access to food, and we have access to more processed food. And that I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm not even
Hmm.
saying that. I believe in nutrition, and I believe in eating all types of food and not moralizing any type of food,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
right?
right. Yeah.
And but at the same time, like so maybe there is more obesity, but that doesn't mean that it's because people are like lazy or because they don't want to they're only eating processed food. It's just the way that we eat has changed.
And the way that we move and the way that things are being automated. But let me
Right.
let me say one that I feel very strongly about is because diets keep being foisted on people. You need to lose weight. You need to lose weight. And someone goes
Right.
on a diet, and 67% of people who go on a weight loss diet will regain back more weight than they lost. It's
Right.
predictable. So, in terms of the changes in body size, it could be because of all of the
We're
focus
dieting.
on dieting.
That's
Yeah.
irony. That's like the whole ironic story.
Yeah, and so there tends to be, and you're not doing this, but I just thought I'd use an opportunity to say this. There
Yeah.
tends to be, this moralizing of, oh, and a scapegoating a particular food. So now, right now, the food being scapegoated is ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always a villain, and then there's a savior.
Right.
And the thing that's so fascinating to me is even the definition of ultra processed foods cannot be agreed upon. They did a study. I think they had 150 experts, 250 foods, and they could not agree what Nova category of processing to put them in. And I think only 5% of foods made it into what was it? It was anyways, I just read this and go, oh my God, because it's a poorly defined category. But when I say the next thing, then you'll go, oh my gosh. So the fact that Twinkies and tofu are both ultra processed foods, and yet we know on a research level that there's a different impact when you're eating plant-based foods, you know? So, and there's just a lot of moralizing that's happened because of that. That's
Right.
problematic. And now there are people saying, "Oh, you can be addicted to ultra processed food." It's like you can't even we can't even agree what is an ultra processed food. How can you even? So now the fear mongering goes into food addiction, which then becomes
Right.
its own problem in
Yeah.
terms of adding more stigma. And it'd be one thing if it was something that really is happening when the concern I have is then that someone says, oh, I have to stop eating these particular foods. And then when
Right.
that tends to happen, that builds a life of its own and a craving of its
Hmm.
own. And I've had people really upset because they really believe that they have this loss of control eating and that nothing else can explain it than food addiction in their mind. And I'll say, it's really understandable because it's hunger is so underestimated. The power of biological hunger cannot be denied. And then there's the psychological hunger from the restriction. And the
Hmm.
more we have forbidden foods, the more it creates that particular cycle.
Hmm. Hmm. So basically, what you're saying is that this is just so ironic, but the more we diet, the it's predictable that your weight will be higher. So if we're
Yeah.
looking at obesity and we're saying, where is this obesity coming from? And yes, I agree with you. There's where everybody's looking for a scapegoat, and I don't think it's because of GMOs. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just
Hmm.
saying that the way that we eat is totally different now.
Yeah,
So
I would
we,
agree with that for sure.
yeah. So
But
it
but
could,
even if we look at though the term obesity, it's kind of a weaponized term medically. If you look at
yeah,
the Latin root, it means to eat until one has gotten fat. It
right.
completely disregards diversity. It completely disregards how someone is eating or moving their body. And there was a study published last year. I think it was almost a 500,000 people, where they looked at BMIs, which is a fraught metric, a lot of problems with that metric, but they looked at that in fitness and they looked at if you had a high BMI, but were you fit, what was the impact on your mortality? Guess what? It was really good. So
Okay.
what really mattered was in terms of if you're concerned about health was fitness, not the size of your jeans, you know? But we keep getting pummeled in the media that gotta lose weight, gotta lose weight, and that it's such a toxic message. And it's something that hasn't worked for hundreds
Yeah,
of years. And now we have this
right.
pill, this injection
Yeah,
that has come along.
yeah,
We still
right.
don't know what the impact of that's going to be because the studies I think the longest I've seen is maybe a 4-year study. Well, what happens
Right.
at 5 years? What happens
Yeah.
at 10 years?
Right, right, right. Okay, I know the answer to this question, but I want to hear your
Ah,
answer. What's
yes.
wrong with BMI? Tell me. Tell everybody. BMI. It's height and weight, and we have a measure of quote unquote health.
Yeah, so it was originally created by a statistician. It was never intended to be a measure of health. It was more just trying to assess bodies and seeing just what body sizes are. And it was based on white European men. So it doesn't even translate well to other populations. It doesn't consider lean mass. A lot of professional football players would meet the category for, quote, obesity according to the BMI. It's incredibly flawed. It's something that scientists acknowledge, it's something that the American Medical Association acknowledges, and yet it's still being used,
Every day. Every day.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's actually banana pants. I don't get it. It's such
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
flawed metric
Yeah.
that it's like, let's not use it.
Yeah, I wish. I wish. I know. I
Yeah.
told my clients when they were telling me, no, my doctor said I'm in an unhealthy BMI. I said I'm also in it. I'm also in a quote unquote unhealthy BMI. But the thing is, like, I know that a lot of people in the intuitive eating space, they don't like the word obesity, which I totally agree with. That's a terrible word. Eating yourself fat, horrible. But I also don't love the larger bodies, smaller body terminology because it's like, you know how we say like, um, if you're in a larger body, then you're saying that there's a larger body and a smaller body, but like it's all relative. Do you know what I mean? Like what's
I
considered
do. So here's what I think about. I think about the usage of the term in terms of the activists in the field, the people, the fat activists who are living in fat bodies, and what they're trying to do is to reclaim the word fat as a description like tall or short, not with the pejorative.
yeah,
So we kind of follow our lead according to the people that have the lived experience of it. And in terms of, a higher weight body, smaller weight body, yeah, I hear your argument that, well, that's still hierarching bodies.
yeah,
But I think just like there's tall or short, I don't think
yeah,
that has a same kind of impact. And then, the other thing is, so even though, like, yeah, we have to be careful how we, what we call our bodies, I've had patients in larger bodies who are fat, and they do not like that terminology fat at all because they have been beat up with it,
Right.
and so we
Yeah.
can't force someone to do something that they're not ready. I'll explain, why I use the terminology, but if it makes them feel uncomfortable, I'll
Yeah.
use whatever terminology they like because it's
Right.
it's their body.
Yeah.
So we have to have respect for
Yeah.
everybody.
I'm always thinking about these things, and people are asking me, and let's say I'll find myself saying to someone, to one of my kids, "Oh, is that your friend who's very short?" And then I just go, did I just say that? Because like I don't know. I don't want to, like I don't want my kids to say, "Is that the girl who's very skinny? Is that the girl who's very fat? Is that the girl?" But then I'm
Mm,
like, no, I'm actually trying to neutralize, like it's like I understand why a lot of people are like, you don't like saying this is healthy, this is unhealthy. I'm like, no, I don't like calling things healthy or unhealthy because it's context. If you're on a desert
yeah,
island, which one's carrots or carrot cake? I love that one. And I find myself talking about Ensure all the time. Like people, I worked in nursing homes for 5 years. How did you would look at this and say it's ultra processed? This is keeping these residents alive, right? So there's context,
yeah.
there's nuance.
Context is such an important part. Absolutely.
At the same time, it's like I just want to talk. Like so I get like I hear both. I want everything to be neutralized, and I also want to be able, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I want to be able to like use the right terminology.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's so much nuance, and oh my gosh, there's a book I have it in my bookshelf, not here, it's in my other. Um, it is so, so, so good. It's written by an activist, and it's about calling people in as opposed to calling them out. And this is somebody who has done a lot of work in a lot of tough cases and has said, when we end up alienating people because now we're being policing of language,
Yeah.
that's not helping our cause. And so we have to have
Right.
some grace in it. There is a
Mhm.
place and time where the calling out has its place, but we have to think about, again, the context,
Yeah.
that we can educate someone on why maybe we don't want that terminology
Yeah.
without belittling somebody and shaming them. Because if you don't know, you don't know, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that. I love that. I'm
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna like use that somewhere in my
I'm gonna email you the title of that book
yeah.
because I'm embarrassed. I don't remember. It
Yeah.
is like out of 2025, of all the books I've read, that was the one that had the biggest impact on me. I thought, oh, I wish I
Yeah.
had this book earlier,
Oh,
but
I
it
want to
only
read
just
it.
came out.
I want
Yeah,
to
it
read it.
was.
I'm so excited.
I was.
Um,
Yeah.
the book that I'm like working on right now is going to be similar to the book Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Are you a fan of that
The
book?
book.
Ah, it's my favorite book. So I want to write that book as the dietitian. So
Hmm.
my story of a dietitian. I want to title it something very interesting, something like Becoming Your Own Mother, something like that. So it's like
Ooh.
a lot of rejecting the voices in your head.
Hmm.
And it's a lot about like losing my mother, loss, grief,
I
body
remember
grief,
that. Yeah.
grief grief of what you think your life will be like, and me as a dietitian. And also like there's so many stories of clients that just have that human experience of like dieting stole so much of their life, and like they're trying to
Yeah.
reclaim it, and it's very painful. It's extremely painful.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like
um
a great book. Can't wait to read it.
well, you've impacted so much of my work, and
Ah, wonderful.
I was so excited to interview you again, and I really wanted to hear your opinion on Ozempic, and I just love you and Elise. I've interviewed Elise as well, just like getting to know you and how you really humanize people, like you said, and that every person is a nuanced person and
Yeah.
has nuance and context that we don't know by looking at them. And your work is so important to me. So
Oh,
thank you
thank you.
for coming on, for sharing, and anything you want to leave the listeners with. Any last words?
Well, based on our conversation, and I'm just going to like really reinforce the importance of dignity and respect for all people. That I think is missing right now in our society, and would go a long way if more people would keep that in mind. And then, lastly, this is something I just realized I shared with Elise that other than my children, Elise is the longest relationship I've been with, and not counting my sisters and all that kind of stuff, and my brother, but she's been the longest relationship I've had. So I just thought that was really interesting, and we continue to grow and evolve as we do this work, and we're working on an updated intuitive eating book that'll be out sometime next year.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Again, you've just so profoundly impacted my life and my client's
Ah,
life. And you know, you give me, we say in Hebrew, chizuk, strength to keep up my work because
ah,
it does. It feels like we were swimming upstream and then we were doing well and Ozempic came out and I just feel like a lot of people are like, whatever. Who cares about non-dieting? I have the drug. And I'm like, what
nobody
about all the
cares.
other stuff we've been working on, you know?
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on, and I look
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing you again one day. You'll all come on again, and have a great weekend.
That'll be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.